A little bit about Maria Sharapova, who was given a 2-year drugs ban. Now, a little bit about the story of Maria. She burst onto the scene as a 17-year-old winning Wimbledon, and then a year later her father took her to Moscow to see a doctor where he prescribed 30 different medications and supplements for her to take. She stopped working with the doctor in 2012 but carried on taking 3 of them, including Meldonium, that was banned, a banned substance from the beginning of the year. So she's going to go to appeal, but she has been given a 2-year ban. This is the story so far.
We start with the news that Maria Sharapova has been banned from tennis for 2 years after testing positive for the banned drug Meldonium.
I did fail the test and I take full responsibility for it.
You know, some people thought it was going to be less than that, but I think that's about right. I mean, you know, I spoke a lot about it in March. I talked a lot about it, and you know, in sport, if you are taking performance-enhancing drugs, you deserve to be punished and suspended. It's then up to the governing bodies and the courts and the lawyers to, to work out, how long that suspension is. It's not for me to decide that.
I was obviously very surprised. That was my first. My first feeling, I sort of couldn't believe it. But at the same time, I feel as if, I'm the type of guy that, I don't really like having, I think drugs and doping in sport is not acceptable, and, I stand very clear of it. But at the same time, I mean, I was just really surprised, and, it's not my job to decide how long she gets or, when she comes back. So, yeah.
Well, I'm not really informed with the case. I don't know any details. But the only thing I know is that Maria has a great head on her shoulder. I'm sure she handled every situation, the best way you can. It's not easy for an athlete to be away for so long, but the only thing I can do is wish her all the best.
For Maria, as she was at the top of the game, and I don't know the details of her case. I don't know what is going on, and I'm just really hoping for her that she's going to be able to bounce back from that and to get back to tennis as soon as possible.
I think it's fair, and if you want to keep as clean a sport as possible, when people do violate and break the rules, they need to be punished.
It's very difficult. It's a big story, this, and it's a difficult story to understand because this drug was not banned until January the 1st this year, and she just claims she didn't realize it, and yet WADA are saying she was sent an email, but it was her agent that was supposed to be telling her what was banned, and he hadn't checked what was banned. So she's saying it's unintentional, but really is the bottom line you are responsible for what you put in your own body?
That is absolutely the bottom line. The integrity of the sport is everything here. Did she have a performance-enhancing drug, one that is banned in her system? Yes, she did. How it got there is secondary, and I'm sorry that, if it's unintentional or intentional is absolutely immaterial. What we're watching here is a sport on TV. These 7,000 people here have all paid to come in. No matter what sport it is, you've got paying customers and people sitting at home. They need to know that what they're watching is clean. Otherwise, there's no point in doing any of this. And we'll just have a drug-fueled tournament, and we'll have a tournament where nobody's on drugs. In fact, let's do that with the Olympics. You want to see somebody run 100 meters in 8 seconds and then die at the age of 34? Fine. That is the logical extension of all this. It's in your system. Whether or not it got there intentionally or not, it's got nothing to do with it. And don't tell me that somebody worth, 20 to 30 million a year in commercial endorsements alone, plus prize money. Don't tell me that you had no oversight on that. Your team have had no oversight. Max Eisenbud from IMG representing her, the team around. There's been some very, very big mistakes made, but now I'm afraid you've got to pay the price because we need to know that what we're watching is clean. The only way she can appeal is on the harshness of the sentence. I understand that the ITF were pushing for a 4-year ban, which would have certainly ended her career. She can come back now in January, unless the Court of Appeal, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, lessen it, in which case she would come back quicker. But as it stands, it'll be January 2018 when she can return. There'll still be some tennis in her system if she wants it. But the point is, and Andy Murray has been superb on this as well, very strong and happy to come out and say it needs to be clean. What medical purpose could you have for using that? Do you believe that or not? I'm allowing a little crack of light. We can certainly debate it. Meldonium, mildronate, take a close look at that drug and what it does for you, and then ask yourself whether you want to be taking that for 10 years and whether you should have been. I don't believe it, and I'm glad that she's got the ban. I'm afraid it's just too bad. It's a sad story, but it's, you know, you got to pay the price.
And she admitted taking it 5 times at the Australian Open, 6 times during Wimbledon last year. And it's interesting that when you have a drugs test, you have to fill in a drugs form. Now, she hadn't told any of her team. The only people that knew she was taking Meldonium was herself, her manager, her agent, Max, and her father. So not her doctor, not her nutritionist, not her physio. On the drugs form, the player has to fill out what drugs they are taking and sign it. Never once, and she was tested, I think, many times during the last 2 years, has she actually mentioned Meldonium. She is claiming she only put down the medication she takes on a daily basis.
Well, there's a lot of suspicious stuff there with you know, a lot of the quotes that she said. She said in the interview there that she takes full responsibility for her actions. Correct. You have to take full responsibility. Andy Murray said the same thing. If you're caught doing that, if something happens, you have to take full responsibility. The ban is correct. It sends a message out as well, by the way, that when the drug authorities come after a superstar like this and don't try and sort of push it away, it sends a message out to everybody else. I agree totally with what Andy said. You have to have the reputation of a clean sport. I believe tennis is, by and large. And when something happens like this, you have to go for, and the full penalty has to happen.
Okay, well, let's get further reaction to this story with John Inverdale.
Well, with me here on the balcony overlooking the court, which is clean and looking like we're going to have players on it very, very shortly, Barry Flatman and Mike Dixon, 2 of the most esteemed members of the press room, who've been writing about this Sharapova case for the last few months. How much is this a benchmark for how seriously the tennis authorities are taking what is perceived to be, perhaps, a drugs problem within the sport?
I think it's a very firm benchmark. They see there are 2 major problems to tennis at the moment: the drug threat and the gambling threat. And this is a massive line being drawn in the sand on how far they're prepared to go. Maria Sharapova is arguably the biggest name in women's tennis, and they have not been afraid in banning her because they want to make a stance.
There are lots of financial imperatives here, of course, and the women's game, I'm sure, would love to have Sharapova back because they need the Sharapova-Williams rivalry. It's everything like that. How much is there the cynicism in the journalistic brain of yours that says it's 2 years, but actually on appeal they'll knock it down to 1?
Well, I would think, I mean, the maximum term is 4 years. She actually got 2 years. And given the fact that we know that the drug was in her system and she hasn't denied that, I don't really see how much further they can actually knock it down. I was speaking to someone who knows a bit more about this than me, who's been involved in this appeals process. His view was that it actually couldn't go down a great deal further. Further to what Barry said, I mean, I think tennis has actually come out of this reasonably well, because the rap on tennis has been to sort of sweep it under the carpet, a bit like we've seen in golf on a few occasions. And actually they've caught a very big fish, and someone who, as you say, her absence from the tour is pretty damaging to the game, I mean, let alone herself.
Well, what's your... I gather that we're having the players out in a couple of moments' time. There's a slight delay for whatever reason. In terms of the line in the sand having been drawn, though, how much do you think bagging a fish as large as Sharapova really is, you know, pour encourager les autres? A lot of people in the locker room are going to be saying, whatever I was tempted to take, don't even think about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that is the message that's been given out very firmly. They all got tested at the Australian Open, so it just goes to show that Sharapova was the only one taking Meldonium, playing at the Australian Open. But the message is very, very plain in glaring big letters: don't do it.
And do you think, across the board, that tennis now, having made this stand, if you like, that the sporting public at large are going to view the sport slightly differently? Andrew Castle was saying a few moments ago that we have to believe what we're seeing on the court. How much is this a statement that tennis is prepared to confront, however big the issues might be?
Well, I think it's a fair statement. I mean, in my view, you know, tennis is a pretty rich sport. There are some extremely wealthy athletes who are rightly very well rewarded in it. I still feel they could put more resources into it. I mean, when you read the Grand Slams, you know, for example, we've just had the French Open, and it was 32 million euros, the prize money there. Wimbledon, it escapes me, but it's even more than that. I mean, the sort of reasonably accurate guesstimate is that they're putting about £3 million, if that, per year into drug testing. I'd like to see that grow a little bit because, you know, Andrew's right. You have got to believe in what you're seeing on the court is clean. And if I was a player, and really we mustn't forget, this is about protecting clean players as much as anything. If I was a player, I'd be thinking, well, if I have to forego a fraction of my prize money to ensure that the person competing against me, we're doing it on a level playing field, that seems to me like a decent bargain.
Good stuff. Thank you very much to Mike Dixon and Barry Flatman. And just a very quick word to Stephen Farrow, the tournament director, who is here. If I can just grab you, Stephen. Obviously a frustrating start, but, you know, semi-blue skies now. What's